Welcome to Behind the Scenes podcast brought to you by Kalaari. Abhijit Bhaduri has built many high performance teams and organizations. Today, he brings to us his learnings and experiences in building great teams, great cultures, great organizations. Welcome, Abhijit. Thank you for joining the Kalari podcast and taking the time. I'm excited and looking forward to our conversation.
Thank you so much for having me here, Vani. It's such a privilege to be with you here.
Abhijit, I know you have probably gotten lots of comments on your book, Dreamers and Unicorns. Thanks for taking the time to write a book. But I thought, we'll start a conversation. You talk about employee engagement and how that is important for optimizing performance. And of course, that's very intuitive, and we'd all agree. But in where we are today, the remote first world, how do you think motivating teams and performance measurement is going to change?
So I think there are a couple of things that are happening now. We need to, first of all, start looking at the online world very differently from the way that we have looked at when everybody was co-located or everybody could sort of jump onto the call at the same time. So we are now in a scenario where you are looking at really, work has traveled to the home front, and therefore we need to really manage multiple roles. So I think the way we have to look at it is just as much as what you did, let's say in a training session in a classroom, cannot be replicated exactly. The time is different. You need more facilitators. You need to engage the people in a different way. It's a different way of working. So we have to first thing I would say is stop thinking about it as pretty much just doing the same thing, except that we are now doing it in front of the camera. I think that's the first major mistake that people do. The second thing is, if you look at the amount of time that we spent in meetings earlier, and now if you sort of look at it, according to the latest Economist, managers spend about 23 hours a week on meetings, and that actually is draining because for various reasons we like to have the same duration of meeting. So if I was having an hour-long meeting earlier when we used to meet in the meeting room, we are having 1 hour meetings and it's draining. So attention spans are shorter. It's much tougher to work like that. So I think just acknowledging that it's a different way of working is probably the way to sort of build that, shift.
Abhijit, you have tremendous experience on the field in corporates in many situations. How should I think about building trust in an organization? What does that mean? And examples from your experience would make it so much more easy to learn from.
We have lived in a world where we've always said that logic is for the office and emotions are for home. And yet now, as work has moved home, we have to learn to become far more comfortable in dealing with as I said, the workplace is a very different workplace. So to look at it as a fresh new animal which we are not familiar with. The second piece to sort of really start looking at is how do we build deeper relationships, because trust is actually drawn out of two elements. Trust has one element, which is expertise. So if I know that you are really good at what you do, you have the expertise to be able to do it, we trust that person. So which is the reason why we go to a particular kind of a doctor and not the others, even though everybody may have a medical degree. So the reason for that is, the reputation of trust, the ability to inspire that trust through a conversation. Because when you feel heard, you trust people more, instead. So those are some of the ways in which you understand that building trust is about building that relationship first. The second element is building predictability. When we build a degree of predictability, which is where people trust their friends because we know how the person is going to behave. We know if we share a secret, it's safe with them. So those are ways in which people have built little pieces of social capital.
In all my career, I have been
Yeah.
very lucky, Abhijit, to have HR in my firm be true business partners to me.
Right.
In most of the companies, even large companies at times, but certainly in most of the startups, HR is never really. It's a tactical, it's functional, but it is not necessarily cultivated as strategic to the company's success.
Right.
I'd love to hear your advice and guidance on this for young founders.
So I think one of the the way to understand that what creates value in the firm, if you look at it, yes, product market fit, having the right capital and the way that you spend it, that has not changed. So that certainly remains important. But I think when I started to look at the research that I did for about 4 years when I wrote this book, one of the big shifts that I understood was the value creation today comes more from things like intellectual capital, the ability to attract talent, your ability to build trust in the consumer or in the investing community around the ecosystem. All of that, I mean, these are intangible factors which remain very important. So the way you build your brand, which is the leadership brand, the talent brand, and the culture brand, really become the three big things that HR should be doing. Yes, there is a transactional piece, but today software takes care of most transactions. When you are looking at building a talent brand, then there are a whole lot of other factors that you are looking at. Building the leadership is not just about having one person being the visible face, but how do you build a leadership, the talent density of the organization where people really want to work in the place because the brightest people of that profession work there. So those are ways in which HR can add value. So designing the employee experience is the second aspect that I would say that HR should be tasked to do, which means trying to understand people, process, and technology as a way to design better employee experiences. The third element that HR should be really focusing on, and that's what founders should leverage HR for, is to be able to actually say that how do you understand employees that you have pretty much as a proxy to understand your consumers and customers.
You talked about talent. Now, for most startups, they are short on capital and they are still unknown from a brand, and
Yes.
they feel handicapped in terms of building that talent density. So,
Right.
how can a CEO at an early stage of the company still have the opportunity to go build that great talent?
That's actually a fabulous question. That the strategy that you use for getting great talent when you are 5 people or 20 people is very different from the strategy you would use when you have 100 people or 500 people or 50,000 people. So your talent strategy evolves. At the earliest stage, people join the organization because of the vision of the founder. That's really what sells either to the investing community or to the employees or potential employee talent pool, if you look at it. So the ability to articulate the value proposition beyond the product and what it could do and the wealth it could create, etc., all of that. But I think the biggest thing that a startup can offer is the ability to get really wide-ranging experience across different functions, and you can help the person build those kind of skills, which is extremely hard to build in a larger organization because larger organization is a lot more fixed. If I want to do something about finance, if I'm an HR, it's tougher for me to get to do that in a larger organization. In a startup, it's very possible because everybody does everything. You are the office boy, you are also the MD. So it is that mindset. Two, I think the ability to really begin to understand what it is like to work at an extremely great speed, and to pivot and to be able to leverage. These are experiences which are absolutely invaluable, and most people at the start of their careers really look for something like that. The third biggest thing that a startup can offer is the ability to build two of the most valuable skills today in today's marketplace, post pandemic, I would say. One is the ability to deal with ambiguity. Where else can you deal with ambiguity and learn about it more than in a startup? And two, I think being fearless, knowing that when you have sometimes you have just a month's salary left in the bank, and you have expenses which are much more. How do you sort of retain your courage and your cool and composure? I mean, these are some very, very valuable experiences you can never get in any firm if it's not a startup.
It's certainly a trial by fire, the process of building a startup into a large enterprise. But you talk about liberating structures and roles, and that
Yeah,
concept actually resonated with me. At Kalaari, we have a very non-hierarchical structure, and and everybody has a voice to express and speak up. And so
sure.
that works for us in the world and the work that we do. But I
Sure.
want you to talk about this concept of liberating structures and roles, and how can that be something truly an important aspect of building a successful enterprise.
So I think when you look at the whole concept of liberating structures has two elements. One of which is how do you get the voice of everybody into the firm in a very, very time efficient manner, which does not necessarily need a deep amount of expertise, to have before you can do that. For most organizations, the real process is as soon as you are beyond a meeting room size, which means physically, your organization capacity is beyond a meeting room, you need to start investing in these structures. So, A, how do day-to-day things get done quickly, and two, you are also looking at how do you get ideas of most people, practically everybody, if as long as it's possible, in a very, very quick way without really making it a full day long affair in a workshop and doing all of that. How do you do it in a quick way? Making that a part of the culture can really make a huge difference, because then people are also able to give you feedback on something which is not working. They ask them to tell me what is not working. When you look at that, it's a very quick way for people to talk about it without feeling threatened.
I want to switch to a slightly different topic, Abhijit, and pick your thoughts on building a brand. Now,
Sure.
companies do build product brands, okay, and they understand that largely. Uh, but building a employee-centric company brand and personal brand, right? So, what are ways in which, why is this important, and what are ways in which one can begin to do this?
You know, Many people, when they think about brand, they kind of think about themselves in the traditional sense that there's a lot of flash and flare and all of that. But it is your ability to create value for the other person that's really your brand. I mean, people can say whatever they want about themselves. It's eventually what others say about you is what creates your brand. So let's say if I'm a doctor, or an engineer, and then everybody knows me for something that I do really well. I'm a UX designer, so I am known for that. I have created, these are my, the kind of designs I've created. This is my portfolio. Being able to put it online makes it possible for more people to learn from you, which builds your brand. Two, it also helps you learn from others, because then people say, well, this I tried implementing and this didn't work. So you also get to sort of do that. This process of engaging with others, is one of the most powerful ways to build a brand, because in the online world, building a brand is not like having a megaphone that you keep announcing to others how great you are. That's not how a brand is built. But it's about how do you create value in multiple ways. It could be the ideas that you share. Do people find it useful to spend time with you? Would they come and spend time with you and ask you a question which they wouldn't ask otherwise? And those are ways in which you become valuable to others. And everything else follows. So organizations, when they are looking for their employees to build their brand, are ways in which the employee has the greatest amount of credibility when they say this is a great place to work. For example, yeah. So if an employee says that unprompted, and you can always make out a fake product review. We know when you go to a site on Flipkart or Amazon, and you see 400 sites, all of which are copy paste of that. It's a fake review. But when people are able to also comfortably say, this is what I like, this is what I don't like, and be comfortable with saying that, those are ways in which an organization's talent brand builds credibility. That, yeah, I mean, they're working on some of the things, but here are some great things, and it appeals to people that there is authenticity, that people can talk about, even what they don't like. Those are ways in which employees can be very powerful brand ambassadors, because they are the ones who have most credibility. Number two, the consumer becomes a very powerful brand ambassador. So your consumer can be a great influencer for your brand. And then there are, of course, influencers whose work, the thought leadership, creates a natural fit with the work that you do. That is a third way in which you sort of find ways to amplify your talent brand. These are three different models which people can use.
And Abhijit, you are a very versatile person, and I truly believe the world rewards people who are not robotic about how they go about doing things, right? So, but how do you cultivate multiple passions? How do you integrate that into our complex lives? And what are your thoughts and really guidance to live a whole life? As we wrap up this conversation.
Gosh, Vani, you're the one who's the mountaineer and an investor and a startup founder multiple times. You're the one who's got multiple talents as well. So, all of us have more things than we give ourselves credit for. If you look at the kind of hobbies that you had as a kid, if you just simply sustained them at various points of time, everything that you do creates a broader network of interests and trends and people you learn from. So I think the biggest way to do it is to do three things. I would say one is education. So if there are things that you can learn, by taking a class or some such thing, whether online or in person, whatever works for you, to do that. The second thing that I did was to take a class and understand Adobe software. It was absolutely phenomenal for me to do that. The second is to be able to learn from other people. So education, experience, or exposure and experience are the three ways. Exposure means you work with different people and see how does this guy do it, and most people will be happy to share that with you. The third is you try out many things. So education, experience, and exposure are the three things which you sort of play with in order to try out as many things as you want to. So, and we always find time for what you really want to do.
On that note, thanks for making the time to do this podcast, and I've thoroughly enjoyed our conversation, and I think it's very valuable for sharing knowledge and experience as you are doing with those that can leverage that and build their dreams and build their unicorns. So thank you so much, Abhijit, for this conversation.
Thank you, Bunny. It was absolutely phenomenal to sort of do this really power-packed conversation with you. And as you know, I'm a deep admirer of the kind of work that you are doing. So I hope these ideas will be useful and the book will be useful too. Thank you.